It was nearly 2 a.m. when Michael first spotted the figure at the side of the road. The headlights of his car sliced through the pitch black night, illuminating the empty stretch of highway that twisted through the dense woods. The low hum of the engine was the only sound, a companion to the heavy silence of the rural stretch of road. He wasn't supposed to be out here, not at this hour, but the overtime shift at the factory had run longer than expected, and the quiet loneliness of the night was almost comforting. As he rounded a bend in the road, he saw her, a young woman, standing by the shoulder, holding up her thumb. She wore a long, faded coat that fluttered in the cold wind, her face half obscured by the shadows. Something about her seemed wrong. The chill creeping through the car's vents wasn't the only thing sending a shiver down his spine. Still, Michael couldn't ignore the instinct to help. He slowed down, pulling up beside her. "You need a ride?" he asked, his voice tentative. The woman looked up, her eyes glowing in the dim light. There was something haunting about her gaze, but he couldn't place it. She hesitated for a moment before nodding, and Michael pushed open the passenger door. "Thank you," she murmured, climbing in with an almost eerie quietness. As she settled into the seat, Michael noticed her hands. They were pale, almost translucent in the dim interior of the car. She didn't seem cold, though. It was as if she wasn't really there at all. "So, where are you headed?" Michael asked, trying to break the ice, even though a sense of unease lingered in the air. She hesitated again. "Just a little further down," she replied, her voice distant. "I'm just trying to get home." Michael nodded, but his curiosity gnawed at him. There was something familiar about her face, something he couldn't put his finger on. He glanced at her again in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of her profile, the outline of her face so striking that it sent a wave of déjà vu crashing over him. "Have we met before?" he asked, more to himself than to her. The woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, her eyes grew distant, as if she were lost in a memory. I think you might know me," she said softly. "My name's Emily." Michael felt his breath catch. Emily. He knew that name. "Emily," his voice cracked with recognition. "Emily Hayes?" Her eyes snapped to his, her gaze suddenly sharp. "Yes, that's me." A chill ran down Michael's spine. Emily Hayes. He knew that name from the news. His mind raced to the headlines he'd read years ago. A local girl had gone missing on this very stretch of highway. They had found her body weeks later, dumped in the woods nearby. It had been a gruesome case, one that haunted the community for months. "Wait a minute." Michael's heart began to pound. You were killed. You." She cut him off, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I've been lost." The air in the car seemed to grow thicker, and Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He glanced at her once more, her face now unnervingly pale, her eyes too wide, too unblinking. Her skin looked almost translucent in the low light. "What do you mean, lost?" he asked, his voice trembling. You're not. How are you here?" The woman, Emily, didn't answer at first. She was staring out of the window, the darkness pressing against the glass as the road stretched endlessly ahead. "I didn't mean to die, but it happened. And now I'm stuck," she said, her voice as hollow as the wind outside. "I've been trying to get home for so long, but I can't." Michael's heart skipped a beat. He had to stop. His mind was racing. This was impossible. People didn't just come back from the dead, not like this. But here she was, sitting next to him, her presence unmistakable and yet otherworldly. Suddenly, the temperature in the car dropped, and Michael felt his breath fog in the air. The radio, which had been static, crackled to life with a sharp burst of static noise before a voice emerged, faint and distorted. "Accident. Highway. Dead. Find her." The words were indistinguishable, but they sounded like an old news broadcast. The hair on the back of Michael's neck stood up. The dashboard lights flickered. "Emily," Michael said, his voice trembling. You okay? What's happening?" She turned slowly to face him, and for the briefest moment, her features twisted into something grotesque. Her face became a blur of darkness, her eyes black pools of endless depth. The air inside the car felt like it was closing in. Then, just as quickly as it happened, it was gone. She was back to the girl he had first seen, almost too still, too quiet. "I'm so tired," Emily whispered. "Please, just take me home." Michael could barely breathe. His hand shook on the wheel as he pressed the accelerator harder, the tires squealing against the asphalt. The road stretched on endlessly, yet he didn't recognize a single landmark. "Where am I going?" Michael croaked, his voice barely audible. Emily didn't answer. The car hummed through the darkness. The shadows grew longer, darker, as if they were closing in on him. The headlights no longer illuminated the road. They seemed to be swallowed by the night. Suddenly, there was a loud thud from the back seat. Michael whipped around, his heart slamming against his chest. Empty. The seat was vacant. The cold air rushed in through the cracked window. The radio crackled again, and this time, the voice was unmistakable. "Comma found. Dead. Last seen. Highway. Dead." The voice was distorted, but now it was clear. "Emily Hayes. Last seen on Route 37. Dead for 5 years." Michael slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt on the side of the road. His heart was pounding, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He whipped around in the seat, gasping for air. Emily was gone. And in her place, written on the fogged-up window, was one word: help. The temperature in the car dropped even further, and the lights flickered one last time before everything went dark. The next morning, a passing truck driver noticed a car pulled off to the side of the highway, its engine still running. Inside, the door was open, but no one was in sight. There was only the faint scent of cold, stale air, and a trail of footprints that led into the woods, where the trees swallowed them whole. There was no sign of Michael, but the car's license plate matched the one belonging to the man who had vanished 5 years ago. They say